What bothers you the most about how today's parents are raising their kids? Serious. Overprotection. Just let them go and play, and fall. Micromanaging kids' lives. There's nothing wrong with having no plans for the day, or the week, or whatever. Let kids be kids. My cousins literally had an hour of downtime scheduled for each day. Everything else was just non-stop go time. They never had the opportunity to be bored. I think kids should be bored. It's what forces you to be imaginative and creative, and it gives you some control over your life. You have to come up with something, as opposed to mom and dad having your day planned out, hour by hour, every day of your life. In the summers before I was going to 3rd and 4th grade, my dad set up schedules for us based on what he wanted us to do. It mostly involved him trying to teach us Hebrew by sitting and having us take notes and write paragraphs that were not just judged by how good the Hebrew we used was, but by the story as well. We had like no free time, and I'm so glad he doesn't try to teach us Hebrew anymore. The only thing they can do to stop their kids from acting up is to stick a screen in front of their faces. It almost feels like theory being rewarded for bad behavior. You threw a fit. Here, have a shiny fun object. They don't teach guide enough. Parenting is supposed to take time. If you have a 2-year-old, sending them to school next year isn't when they should start learning. You should be reading them books, going over shapes and colors, working with numbers, giving them blocks and puzzles. Not just parents, but I hate how society as a whole seems to be incapable of telling children that they did badly or failed at something. Yeah, I get it. You don't want to see the poor kid sad. However, getting over failure, learning to deal with one's own shortcomings and accept responsibility for one's failures is an extremely important part of not being a huge Dutchekano, and a culture of never recognizing that isn't exactly healthy emo. Once, in McDonald's, I witnessed an overweight family ordering. The kid wanted to have milk with his Happy Meal, but the mother interrupted him quickly. No, he'll take a Coke. That's what worries me. Bro, that poor kid doesn't even have a chance at developing healthy eating habits. When I was a cashier at a craft store, a family came through. The little girl had just picked up one of those candy ones that lit up when pushing a button and wanted her mother to buy it for her. The mom asked how much it was, and it turned out to be really expensive. Everything at the store was overpriced. The mom quickly told me no, we're not gonna get it, and tried to explain that to her daughter, who instantly started screaming and crying and going Terminator on the cash. I continued to calmly charge bag her purchases, but the mother just kept on looking at the kid, who continued to scream and make a huge scene, snot and everything, and finally said, "Okay, we'll take it." Cringe. The kid immediately stopped crying and grabbed the wand, looking happy and smug and completely triumphant. I tried to keep the look of pure pain off my face as the mother paid, but it probably showed. The family left with the kid skipping along, having won. I don't know when this happened, but there's a trend today that kids can do no wrong. They absolutely can. Saying that it's the teacher's fault they're doing poorly or condoning their bad behavior isn't doing them any favors. The idea of fearing your child not liking you. People today think that they need to be a friend before they are a parent, and not the other way around. It leads to inconsistent parenting and an unreal worldview by the children. This does not mean a parent needs to be in butthole, but a friend will overlook small deficiencies in character. But a parent knows that if you catch a behavior early enough, then it might not become a habit. You shouldn't be their friend when they're children. You should be their friend when they're adults. This means I sit on the phone an hour a week for MasterChef Mondays with mom, and it's awesome. Not enough parents explain that it's okay to fail, as this is how you learn, and I can't stand the kids acting like they are owed something. Parents don't make them earn. That it's not their kid's fault. Never. Grades bad? The teacher's fault. Always. Broke something in a store? It's just a kid. Geez, it's not his fault. Kids break their leg playing in a playground. The playground isn't safe. Kids pull the ears of a dog. Hard, doesn't stop when it growls. Well, the dog needs to be put down. Kids kick up a fuss in a public place. Well, it's just a kid, that's what kids do. So on and so forth. The fact that parents don't let their kids out to play. The streets used to be packed with kids playing, but now they're just empty. That depends on where you live a lot, but I agree that the average has declined the last 10 to 20 years. Parents who do everything for their child rather than teaching them how to do it. My much younger brother is a great freaking example of this. Many of today's youth are a great example of this. Parents are sending in college applications for their kids and typing up resumes for their teens rather than giving them advice or tips so they can do it themselves. I've seen it firsthand and it just creeps me out. The result is that these people then enter the workforce and don't have mommy and daddy to bail them out and do the work for them. Then have panic attacks, anxiety, and don't show up. Don't do the work correctly. Expect others to do it for them, etc. Former teacher here. Your child is not a genius because he's good at the computer. Everyone his age can bring up web games and music sites. Furthermore, your child might be somewhere between dumb and mediocre. He doesn't have a disability. He's just dumb. There are many things he cannot learn, and of what he can it will happen slowly. This is not a moral judgment. Your child deserves happiness and contentment. Time to start steering him in the direction of a career he can start now. The one advantage he has is knowing college is a waste, and using his 4-year head start to build up an edge. Thank God someone has the gonads to stand up and say this. Little Johnny can't grow up to be anything he wants. He doesn't need adaptive learning. He's just a dumb frick and you need to deal with it, Mom. This isn't exactly on topic, but it bugs me how people my age, mid-20s, think that the new generation growing up is so much worse than our generation. I was hanging out with some friends who were complaining about Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez and how kids these days listen to crap. When a Britney Spears song came on one of their iPods and they all started dancing and singing along to it. You realize it's the same crap, right? And then they were complaining about how kids cartoons suck these days and I named off a bunch of awesome kids cartoons. Adventure Time, Regular Show Act, and nobody had seen them. They just assume that all the cartoons suck. We had our share of bad kids shows when we were young too. I used to love Power Rangers, but if you watch it now it's really bad. This entire topic is so much Reader's Digest level harumphing. I've seen a lot of parents that seem to be uneasy disciplining their child when out in public. If your child is misbehaving, regain control and tell them. Don't be embarrassed about it. I understand the hesitation to punish physically in public, like a little spank. Some strangers have no problem calling the cops or CPS on a parent that spanks in public. You can't even punish your child for something because someone disagrees with your parenting style and takes it to a whole new level. Sad. Everything in moderation. A lot of people are going to say that parents aren't strict enough or don't tell their children no enough. Sure, I agree in some cases, but I also don't agree with yelling and being overly aggressive, because children often don't learn anything from that either. They learn to hide the behavior or learn just not to do it when adults aren't around. Parenting is hard, but I think the best parenting I've seen comes from moderation. I've trained a fair number of teenagers in their first job, the kids who had parents who did whatever worked, but consistently, and usually, given the area, towards the more liberal end of that, are nearly always better to work with than the ones whose folks have a parenting philosophy of whatever type. Allowing their bad behavior to interfere with other people, and expecting it to be a case since they are just kids. If I behaved like that in public, my mom would have laid down the law right then, and there would be a punishment when I got home. Because she made it clear that different situations require different behaviors. I can function as an adult in all social settings, unlike some of my younger co-workers who think they really are special snowflakes. They probably don't need to be so medicated. It seems there is a pill for everything. Kid too hyper? Take this pill. Kid too angry? Here's another. I think they are missing some root problems. My son was having some behavioral issues in school. At the recommendation of the school I went and had him checked out. The doctor talked to me, not my son, for 5 minutes and then handed me a prescription for Adderall. I still haven't filled out that prescription and that was 3 years ago. It really pisses me off when I see parents yanking or screaming at small children as if they are adults who understand why you're mad at them. Like, no amount of screaming is going to make a 3-year-old move any faster. Relevant story. I was in a public bathroom and a woman came in with 3 children. They proceeded to crawl under the door into my stall and just stare. Then they actually started playing and they're running around and chasing each other. I was soupy. The mother just thought it was funny when they started doing that. She got a serious bitching when I finally got over my shock. Not vaccinating their children. As an Asian, I'm most bothered by the ridiculously high expectations and stereotypes enforced by Asian parents upon their children. What's worse is the fact that many of these children are being punished for underperforming, thus leading to this twisted idea that their parents' love is dependent on how well they do at school. This mentality can only be unhealthy, leading to resentment and disappointment. I have seen many children cripple under the weight of their parents' expectation, as well as suffer health issues. This is in addition to those children severely lacking social skills as they grow up, due to being confined. It bothers me more that everyone feels entitled to raise other people's kids. If I wanted your attachment parenting super vegan crunchy earth mama homeopathic bulls advice, I would ask for it. I'm currently in the process of raising 3 kids and I gotta say that it's a freaking hard, thankless job. And I'm probably guilty of many of the things expressed in this thread at one time or another. I've certainly had moments when I was a less than stellar parent. That said, parents today are much more involved with their kids than the previous generation was. From what I can tell, it's a tough balancing act, because the kids learn independence when you force them to play on their own, but they learn the most and bond with their parents the best when you actively play with them. So they need both, but it's tough to know how much. Also, I was the strict parent until a wiser, older person suggested to me that I didn't need to maintain complete control of my kids and, instead, should loosen up a bit and have fun with them. There's a time and place for discipline and I'm not shy about embarrassing them in public if they're acting up, but my kids also needed to learn from me that life isn't always serious. Overprotective parents are the worst. I worked at an after-school club for children aged 6-10 for a year, and I can honestly say that 90% couldn't handle when you told them off for doing stuff they weren't allowed to. And it was mostly because the parents just let them say and do whatever they wanted to, except for all the dangerous stuff. OFC. I am only 22 years old, but I learned stuff the hard way. If I climb that tree, there's a good chance I am gonna fall down and hurt myself, and so I did. These small suckers aren't learning anything about life by getting it handed to them. A couple things. Parents that are more friends with their kids than parents. I get that you want your kid to like you, but love can be had while being a firm, respected authority figure in your kid's life. You don't have to be buddy-buddy with them to get them to tell you things that are bothering them or always be honest with you. You just need to not come down on them with the wrath of Hades every time they do something wrong and instead be firm and fair. A very specific thing. Parents giving their young kids technology at a very young age as an attempt at letting the tech do their babysitting for them. I get letting them play games on iPads and phones and other learning devices. I'm more talking about how some parents will take their kids to dinner and instead of using the time as a learning experience to teach the kids how to have a nice dinner where you converse with the people you're with and how people act with manners around a table in a public setting, they just hand off the iPad and let the kid disassociate from the situation they're in and play games when they aren't eating. If a parent wants to have a nice outing, I'm sure you can find a relative or someone to babysit while you go out and have a fun dinner with your friends. If you take your kids, at least be a good example. How quickly they seem to take in misinformation and spew it as fact. I blame daytime talk shows for this. And the 24-hour news cycle, fear-mongering at its finest. My half-brother can't stand seeing his kid cry. She uses it to her advantage. I don't know whether to praise her or reprimand her. They act as if teachers are to blame for bad grades. Teach them to own up. How parents condone and even reward their child's crappy behavior when in public. No, it's not cute that your spawn made a giant mess in the middle of a restaurant. Too many people are handicapping their children's lives by making them too easy. My wife wanted me to give our son some money because he recently got a job after being unemployed for 6 months and he wouldn't get paid until the end of the month. I told her that him being broke was a consequence of him not having a job for 6 months and he's going to live with the consequences of his poor choices. How old is he? I've seen people trying to get their kids behaved by telling them nicely. I think the best strategy is to be strict. Talking nicely takes you nowhere. Also, I've seen people with an apparent fear of saying no to their kids. Parents losing to their kids. Or, you're struggling to get baby Brandon to stop using a binky? Well, stop giving it back to him. Little Ashley doesn't like to eat at the dinner table because you didn't train her as a baby to eat there. Seriously, I know parents who replaced all of the curtains in their house because Brian doesn't like tassels. Don't give in to your kids. You are bigger than them, and you're supposed to be smarter than them. You can win. Also, stupid name spelling. You can't just give a kid an iPad or some kind of video game just because he whines for it, or so you can just ignore them. You also can't shelter them from everything in freaking existence. I used to play with the chicken before dinner then help cook it. Nowadays, God forbid the kid finds out where their burger comes from. It sounds like you are the parent. I would have to say how they use tablets and phones to shut their children up. Annoys me so much, just don't know why. The worst is at the movies. When I saw Captain America 2, there was this family watching who were sitting near us. The youngest kid looked like he was 4-5 and would not shut up. The mom gave the kid her phone at full brightness and he started playing Angry Birds. It was distracting as heck. I was at Whole Foods the other day and I got so excited that I saw a kid sitting in a shopping cart with his head down. I assumed playing with an iPad, but he was reading an adventure book. I wanted to high-five that mother. No one teaches their kids how to manage money. People do everything for their kids and baby them. If their child does something wrong, they talk to them in a baby voice. No, just freaking no. Talk to children like they are adults and they will develop into functioning adults. When I met adults as a 5 or 6 year old, I had to look them in the eye, shake their hand and introduce myself. I met my parents' new neighbor's kids a couple weeks ago and their mom goes, "This is Blake and this Adam. Guys, say hi to Mr." First, they are 5 and 8, then one barely mutters hi while looking at the ground while the other one just giggles. Sorry, they're just shy. I don't know what it means and I'm not going to pretend I'm Mr. Super Dad, but today at Target while I was getting milk and Dr. Pepper on the way home from running some errands, there was a mom in the produce section who just took a bunch of bananas off the shelf and just stood there as the kids ate them and then took the whole slimy smelly stack of used banana peels to the checkout counter to pay for them. Now, I know what it's like to have unruly kids at the market. I do. I've got 3 of those little monsters and I know what they're like in public. I also know what it's like to have 3 hungry kids who need to eat. But I also what it's like to work retail and I know what it's like to have to deal with buttholes. So you don't just grab food off the shelf and eat it or give it to your kids and then just pay for an empty box, let alone peel 6 freaking bananas and hand the goddamn peels to some poor minimum wage sap because you didn't think to pack a healthy snack for your kids, or they're such unruly buttholes they can't wait until you get to the car to have something to eat. Oh, and as an aside, I can tell she was a super mom because her kids were named, and I am not making this up, as some coveted to protect the innocent, Thor and Zeus. I know that because those 2 little bastards kept running off and she'd have to call out, "Thor, Zeus, come back here. Thor, Zeus, put that down. Thor, Zeus, leave that lady alone." I mean, seriously, what mother would name her kids the same way some rich bastard would name his twin purebred Dobermans? I literally couldn't even today when I heard that. Considering bananas are usually priced by weight, I really hope they told her to never do that again, as it's basically theft. Some places charge by the banana, but not many. Like this video and this good boy will play you a nice song. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.